Land of Fire by Chris Ryan. Read by Christian Rotzka. Autumn in the South Atlantic. 3:32 p.m. on the 25th of May. A bright, cold afternoon in the narrow inlet of San Carlos Water, East Falkland. The alarm call sent a shiver through the British fleet, and my war turned bloody. This was Argentina's National Day. In enemy sorties before lunch, missiles from HMS Coventry had shot down 2 A4 Skyhawk bombers over the Sound, with a third destroyed by small arms fire. An hour later, the bombers had returned to exact revenge, damaging Broadsword and hitting Coventry with 3 bombs, capsizing her and killing 19 men. Now the bombers were back again. Minutes earlier, a Sea King helicopter from HMS Invincible had set me down on the main deck of the SS Northland, a 15,000-ton container ship. There were 4 of us from D Squadron SAS, under the orders of me brother, Troop Sergeant Andy Black. The other 2 were Tom, a huge and unflappable Fijian corporal, and Doug Easton, the troop troublemaker who just made selection. Doug was a bullet-headed tearaway from East London, violently aggressive and forever forcing his opinions on people. He and I had never hit it off. I was 20 years old, and the operation would be my first time under fire in a real war. The squadron was scheduled to undertake a major operation in the next couple of days, and we were hunting for a mission container of stores. Some clerk in Portsmouth had screwed up on the cargo manifest, and our lasered target designators had ended up on the wrong ship. The cavernous main hold was jammed with giant helicopters and massive crates with spare engines for Harrier jump jets. Teams of RAF technicians, crabs in our language, were labouring to bolt the rotors into place on a twin-engine Chinook. Andy sent Tom and Doug forward and took me aft with him to check the lower vehicle deck. We clattered down into the bowels of the ship. The lower deck was crammed with long lines of all-terrain vehicles. "Take hours to search this lot," Andy said. "We'll need more light. Hang on here, Mark, while I go back for a couple of torches." Hampered by me bulky life vest, I squeezed past a grim contingent of battlefield ambulances. From above came the sounds of a tannoy blaring. The Argies were throwing their full weight against the landings. Andy returned with torches, and we set to work. I made out 4 of the squadron's trucks, among a fleet of lightweight tracked vehicles. The first contained bivvy bags and ground sheets as listed. The canvas flap at the back of the next truck was partly unsecured, and I squirmed underneath to take a deco inside. Jesus, I thought, as I played the torch around. The neat packs of Arctic clothing and spare sleeping bags had been hollowed out to make a hiding place. I pulled the canvas back for a better look. Whoever it was had dug out a sleeping bag, and there was a torch, an army-issue water bottle, and the remains of a ration pack. Feeling around among the bundles, I turned up a camera and a miniature tape recorder. Along with them was a piece of electronic kit I didn't recognise. A flat grey plastic box around 6 inches long by 2.5 wide, with an extendable aerial but no tuning dial, only a tiny red button which glowed to show it was switched on. I was about to go and show Andy what I'd found when there was a rustling noise from the front of the truck. Whoever had been living here was still around by the sound of it. Right, I'll have you, I thought, and launched myself across the piled stores. There was a frantic scuffling as a body tried to get away. I got a hand around a limb in the darkness. "Come on, get the fuck out of there," I said, heaving. A foot came out the blackness and connected with my face with a force that rocked my head back against the roof. I could taste blood in my mouth. "OK," I said to myself, "if that's how you want to play it, fine." I let fly a punch with all my 12 stone behind it. My fist connected with something solid. There was a gasp and a whimper, and the struggle ceased. Locating a foot, I dragged my opponent into the half-light near the truck tail to take a look at him. The guy was wearing combat fatigues, which meant he was army. Maybe he'd nicked the gear too. He was so slight, he looked more like a boy than a man. "Who the fuck are you?" I demanded. In answer, he twisted like a snake, diving under my arm to reach the roof flap. I was ready for him, though. Flinging myself after, I dragged him back, rolling him over and pinning him down. He fought and squirmed, scratching and biting furiously. Eventually I got him pinned down by sheer weight. I straddled him between my knees and laced his hands across his chest so he couldn't move. "What's your name then, arsehole?" His response was to spit in my face. I cuffed him a couple of times across the mouth to teach him manners, and he shut up. His wrists were so thin I could hold them both together one-handed while I searched his tunic for ID. It was while I was patting him down that I realised something was wrong, and not in the way I'd been thinking. He was a skinny little devil, all bones and muscle and padded out in odd places. In addition to a combat jacket several sizes too large, he had on a roll-neck sweater with a T-shirt underneath. Ignoring his squirmings, I pulled these up, revealing a narrow ribcage and a flesh-coloured sports bra hiding a pair of adolescent tits. My cabin boy was a girl. I let go of hands and sat up. The torch was lying nearby. I snapped it on. Definitely a girl. She was unkempt and pale, but the dishevelled appearance and dirt couldn't disguise the fineness of the features or burning intensity of the eyes. Younger than me, 17 or 18 at a guess. There was a reddening mark on one cheek where I'd hit her. I reached down to touch the place. Her eyes flashed hatred. A hand swept out the gloom, fingers curled like talons to rake me face. "Bastardo!" I knocked the blow aside. A girl, I was thinking. How she'd got here I couldn't imagine, unless maybe she was some crab's bit of fluff smuggled aboard at Portsmouth. Or she could be a journalist stowed away on board to get a scoop. Then it dawned on me that she'd spoken in Spanish. And it hit me. Jesus, I thought. The bitch is a spy. She's down here vectoring the bombers in on us. I called Andy over. Even against the two of us, she continued to put up a fight. Eventually, we got her tied down with some straps off a vehicle, and Andy told me to watch her while he went to find the ship's ops officer. After that, everything started to go ratchet. The ship's captain and the ops officer took one look at the girl and the kit she had with her, and told Andy and me on no account to talk to anyone. There were long faces as the officers tried to figure out how an enemy agent had managed to breach their security cordon. They brought a couple of seamen down and told them to get the kit off her. In a trice, she was spread-eagled against a bulkhead, and every shred of clothing ripped away. Legs spread, arms outstretched, she was backed up against the wall, and her wrists lashed to steel shackles. Front on, she looked pathetically young and emaciated. I felt no anger now, only pity and disgust. I wondered what they were going to do with her. This was war, and in war, spies were shot. The two seamen stayed in attendance to see she didn't kill herself. Oh, God knows how she was going to manage that, the way they'd trussed her up. I felt sick as we climbed back topside, the captain explaining that we weren't to talk about this. It was all top secret. In other words, a cover-up was in force. Tom and Doug were waiting on deck. The ops officer told us to get our kit together, and a regimental helicopter would fly us back to rejoin the unit. That was when all hell broke loose.